For those of you who weren't here the first time I introduced myself, I am Dr. Vicki Robinson. I'm the program manager for the Teacher Incentive Fund and the Teacher and School Leader Incentive Fund. I want to welcome you to the first Teacher Quality Programs Education Summit. This has been a true collaboration and partnership. I'd like to thank our contractors, AEM, Impact, and Westat. I especially want to thank two young ladies who were my right and left hand in planning this event. So Mia Howerton and Tyra Stewart, if you could please come up. Don't give me faces, please come up. This is just a small token of my appreciation. And I wanted all of you all to see these two young ladies because they made this possible. So as I spoke to many of you while we were planning, and I said, yeah, we're planning for 450 people. Some of you were like, wow. Some of you are like, oh, I've been to some for 1,000 or more. But this is our first, as I said, and I know many of you have planned and attended much larger events, but this is the first time that we're bringing all 7 of the TQP programs together instead of each program having its own project directors meeting. You can clap. So I thought, since our work, interrelates, that we should have one event. And this summit is an opportunity for you all to share, learn, and network with your colleagues from across the country. Those of you that have been around, each program has their own project directors meeting. And I was like, no, let's bring everybody together. The more the merrier, and we can learn more and share more and grow more. Also, you guys, please forgive me I have a mint in my mouth. So as we celebrate during Teachers Appreciation Week, I know some of you all, it's very early for you, so bear with me during this activity. I want you to close your eyes and think about your best teacher ever. So all eyes are closed and you're thinking about your best teacher ever. Now shout out how this teacher made you feel. Shout out how that teacher. Valued, okay, keep going. Special. Smart. Excited. Okay. I also noticed as you all had your eyes closed, there were smiles on your face. Now, if the person next to you, eyes are still closed, just nudge them and say, good morning. So now I want you to stand up if you are ever a teacher or a school leader. If you were ever a teacher or a school leader, please stand. Remain standing. If you taught or led for 10 years, remain standing if you taught for 20 years or led for 20 years. So everyone that is still standing has taught or led for 30 years or more, is that correct? 20, okay, anybody 30? Can I get 30, 30, 30, can I get 30, can I get 30? 30, okay, so the remaining folks that are standing. Great. Thank you all so much for your years of service. So I want you all to remember, no matter who is in office, there are students that show up at schools across the country, many that you all serve, who deserve the best and want high expectations set for them and not excuses because of their zip code. I want you to turn their obstacles into opportunities. The work we do, we, meaning everyone in this room, do for students, whether in the classroom, the principal's office, school district, State House, or the White House, is critical because education is a civil right. And I'm gonna say that one more time. Education is a civil right. And education also helps to promote economic stability. Our highest priority is every student receiving an equitable education. So we look forward to continuing to provide discretionary grant programs. Please don't ask how much money, when is it coming out, when can I get my check? But we do look forward to providing discretionary grant programs in partnership with you as we strive to make sure educators have the support they need along the educator career continuum, and students are taught and led by the most effective educators. Thank you, guys. So now we're going to have the student voice piece by way of a video. As many of you know, this is testing time of the year, so it's difficult for us to get students to come and provide the student voice, but we thought this video was reflective. Enjoy.
Among the most accomplished and fabled tribes of Africa, no tribe was considered to have warriors more fearsome or more intelligent than the mighty Maasai. It is perhaps surprising then to learn the traditional greeting that passed between Maasai warriors, and how are the children? It is still the traditional greeting among the Maasai, acknowledging the high value that the Maasai always place on their children's well-being. Even warriors with no children of their own would always give the traditional answer, all the children are well. Meaning, of course, that peace and safety prevail, that the priorities of protecting the young are in place, that Maasai society has not forgotten its reason for being, its proper functions and responsibilities. All the children are well means that life is good. It means that the daily struggles for existence do not preclude proper caring for their young. I wonder how it might affect our consciousness of our own children's welfare if in our culture we took to greeting each other with this daily question, and how are the children? I wonder if we heard that question and passed it along to each other a dozen times a day, if it would begin to make a difference in the reality of how the children are thought of or cared about in our own country. I wonder if every adult among us, parent and non-parent alike, felt an equal weight for the daily care and protection of all children in our communities, in our towns, in our states, and in our country. And I wonder if we could truly say without hesitation, the children are well. Yes, all the children are well.
So now it's your turn to tell me, how are the children? So as I come around, or someone comes around with a mic, we want you to tell us, how are your children? What are you doing in your district, in your state, for your children? All right, so you can raise your hand. or I can close my eyes and tap someone on the shoulder. I know you guys want to share. How are your children? I forgot to tell you guys that I was a classroom teacher, so I do know how to engage. Someone's hand is up?
I can say in Broward County Public Schools District in Fort Lauderdale, we have an area. In this area, the zip code is 33311. It is considered the worst zip code area in the United States. High poverty, high crime, high unemployment. But I do want to say there's a partnership with 72 businesses, Google, Neiman Marcus, GL Homes, who have embraced this community. They embrace this community through providing books, clothes, food, technology in the hands of every student in the schools in that community. So I want to say we do have partnerships, and we do have businesses that have embraced the community of poverty, that embrace the community with love, and that embrace the community with support. So I want to say, although our children are not totally well, but through the work of partnership and being the old concept of it takes a village, that the children are on the way to being great.
Hello, I'm from Colorado, and though the University of Colorado Denver is located in Denver, we have some deep partnerships with rural districts that we're cultivating. And in rural Colorado, our children are not doing so well. They see a steady stream of teachers coming and going, coming and going. There's a huge percentage of the teachers or the schools in rural Colorado with unprepared teachers, teachers who do not hold the license and sometimes and often do not hold any license. And when you travel through rural Colorado, you see that there are communities that are functioning because they still have a school. And if that school were to go, the community would go. So one of the things that we are doing with some rural partners and community colleges in remote rural areas are building a 4-year degree at the community college in partnership, delivering a 2+2 model, and trying to really attract the people that we know are there who want to stay long enough to really lead the school and contribute to the community, who are from the community, such that the students and the children in those schools have people who are coming because they love who they are and they love the place that they're from and they're willing to stay there. But I would say that for many of the children in rural Colorado and in our highest need communities, they're not doing well. And we need to do more to make sure they are.
Hi, I'm Erica Hunt, and I'm from Illinois. And in Illinois, we radically redesigned all of our principal preparation programs through legislation that shut down all of our programs and required universities to submit under dramatically new requirements. But at the core of all of our conversations as we were conceptualizing the new requirements, we asked at every meeting with our stakeholders, what would principal preparation look like if the needs of kids were at the core? And so what that did is push thinking well past what are the needs of adults, which so often dominates our conversations on policy, and instead of what are really the needs of kids. And how do we have to, that pushed us into a discomfort zone, but that was needed because it really made us think, how do you design radically new programs that are really designed at the core of student learning, and doing this for all kids. So our new requirements require principals to not only get content experience, but clinical experiences in early learning. So it's a P12 endorsement, which also includes parent engagement as a key piece of that, community involvement, how do you work with community partners that are such a key piece of this, as well as there are specific training and competencies that we measure around that. Early learning, so how do you work with English language learners and students with disabilities, as well as gifted education. So that was just the premise of how we started our conversations, and I think that was such a great approach because it really got us to the core of how do we design policies that best meet the needs of all kids.
This side.
Hi, my name is Susan Taylor, and I am from the Newark Montclair Urban Teacher Residency in Newark, New Jersey. And I'm going to be a little personal in this answer. In about 6 weeks, I'm retiring after 45 years as a teacher. I worked as a teacher, a principal, and in teacher ed with our residency program the last 7 years. And at the end of May, every year we bring together all of the residents who have graduated through our program, and we have about 100 at this point, that are spread out across 23 schools in the Newark Public Schools. And they will each come and tell their teacher growth story, and we do that every year. And you ask, how are the children? Our residents, I'm leaving teaching with a great deal of peace when I look at these 100 teachers that we've brought in. They have brought so much more than quality teaching and education to their classrooms. I know that they have brought robotics to high schools that have never had robotics clubs. I know they've brought music to schools where they did not have after-school enrichment music programs. I know that they have taken in students and mentored them at levels that go far beyond the resources of a school, which we all know are sorely under-resourced. The one story I want to share with you is at one of the high schools where we have a resident she's in her 3rd year of teaching. Ariana went to that high school as a student, and Ariana and her family still live in Newark. She's the oldest of 6 kids. When Ariana was a student at that high school, Eastside High School in Newark, her biology teacher impressed her and mentored her all through high school. When Ariana graduated, she said, I want to go to college and come back to Eastside High School as a biology teacher. Ariana got a full scholarship to Brown. She went to Brown University, majored in biology, came back to the residency, studied with us. Her mentor in the residency was that biology teacher, and now Ariana is a bilingual biology teacher at that high school. That's just one of the stories, so thank you.
Thanks for sharing that story, and congratulations on your retirement. All right, anyone else? I guess I'm going to get my steps in today. Oh, we're ready. So I'm not going to go back up on the stage, but I do want to welcome Margot Anderson. Margot, please stand. And I'm not going to say the title because I'll probably mess up, but Margot is our leader, our fearless leader, who has been really involved with working with the transition team. So she keeps us grounded. Thank you, Margot. I now want to introduce Venetia Richardson, who is the director for the teacher quality programs. So all 7 programs that are represented today are under Venetia Richardson.
Good morning. Wow, I feel like I'm at an ASCD conference, so this feels really, really great to see all of you guys here today. Vicki spoke to it well. This was really a long-time vision. I've been at the department what seems like forever, but it hasn't been, 4 years. And to the point Vicki just made, leading over a division of 7 programs. As a practitioner, and I pride myself on calling myself that, because it signals to you that I have been in the trenches and that I understand the work. But my experience was very unique in that I saw us working and moving in different directions to get to the same end. Vicki asked a question about you guys and said, how many of you have been teachers? How many of you have been principals? And I'm going to actually go through that activity again because I want to drive a point home. So many of us pride ourselves in being educators. We keep that label and we hold it close to home. If we don't call ourselves educators, we call ourselves practitioners. And we value that and we wear it like a badge of honor. But those of us who don't necessarily quite feel comfortable using those titles, but are still involved in the charge of making sure that every child in our country is receiving the kind of education that we feel is value added and is life changing. We're all part of that conversation. So although you may not want to stretch your title out to educator or practitioner, you're part of the solution and equally as important to the solution. So I want to go through that activity again. How many of you have been teachers? Don't care how long. You just walked in a classroom a day and left back out. We laugh, but a lot of people do that. I want you to stand up. It's early. Energy. Yes, Vicki. How many of you have been principals, school leaders, chairs, department chairs? Stand up. I want everybody standing. How many of you represent pre-service work? You are actually touching and influencing what happens to those teachers walking into classrooms. You need to stand up. How many of you, I see a couple of people that I know, yes, that I know, Kristen, either you are like really exhausted or, okay. How many of you are connected to organizations that touch adults that walk into schools? All righty then, let's see. Let me make sure everybody's standing. Margot, why are you not standing? So most importantly, the question that is of most importance is how many of you know how the children are? How many of you can say that within the last day, within the last week, within the last month, even within the last year, you know how the children are? If you can respond to that, raise your hand. Good. Those of you who did not raise your hand, I challenge you to think about how you can find a small way to ensure that you have a sense of how the children are in your community. Whether it be at a distance, whether it be showing up at a board meeting, whether it be making a call to your neighborhood school. Just some gesture to ensure that you know that the work that you're doing, directly or indirectly, is actually having an impact. Because at the end of the day, if we don't know that, none of us need to be in this room. So I don't want to bring the volume down, but I do think that that is important. And I do hope that over the next 2 days, we impart upon you some opportunities, some idea, some motivation, or some strategy to do that better. Thank you. You can have a seat. So I think I'm within my time frame. And so I'm going to look straight ahead at Vicki. So if I go over, because I do have the honorable pleasure of introducing our keynote, and I want to give that introduction its due. So, but I do want to share with you a few things that I thought were just so aligned and ideal for the video we just saw. We all should believe and support the idea that children and parents should have a choice. I would even include in that list teachers and school leaders. I believe that when given the choice, parents and students make educational choices based on the kinds of adults in those buildings. the schools and the classrooms that they have afforded to them. Regardless of the label placed on the school, parents will always choose the adults in the buildings. Parents and students choose schools where teachers care about the quality of their practice, where they plan and envision a future for all their students filled with success and accomplishments, where they believe that as 10-year-old Dalton Sherman, and I wanted some of you to look at this, preview this video last night. We didn't have a chance to do it in an activity that we had, but how many of you familiar with Dalton Sherman? It's an old video, yeah. And if you're not, it's old. I mean, he's done a few series, but take a look. YouTube it tonight just so that you come back tomorrow inspired. Dalton at a keynote to Dallas ISD, and you know, that's huge school system. I mean, this young man, 10 years old, was the keynote to their convocation exercise for back to school. And he asked a critical question. He asked them whether they believed that he could be anything or accomplish anything. He then went further and said, do you believe that all of my classmates can be anything, accomplish anything, graduate, be in college and career ready? And that's a question that we really have to ask ourselves every day. I challenged myself on a daily basis when I was in the schools with that question. I wanted to ensure that every day when I walked in, no matter what the day before looked like, that I was walking in with the belief that every student in my building was able to accomplish anything and be anything. Because there are nights you go home and you really don't know. And you really ask yourself, oh my goodness, is he gonna make it? But you gotta come back the next day believing that they are. One of the biggest challenges in this work is recruitment and retention of great educators in the most at-need schools and districts. And I would say that this is also due to choices that they are able to make. Educators are choosing or not choosing schools based on many factors, and most not necessarily grounded in what type of school it is, but mostly based on what is said and known about that school. What is known about the school's success, what is known about the type of support and culture of that school. So let's not leave these next 2 days divided by what we think the ideal of that vision is. But instead, let's participate in a collective dialogue and support for what we would like to see included in the conversation and vision being expressed by that ideal. And I do ask you all to be of the growth mindset and be the true educators that you are in thinking about vision, because we are the facilitators of dreams. We are the facilitators of vision, of great vision. If we address ideas and ideals with a closed or fixed mindset, nothing great happens. Nothing good comes of anything. So I segue from that into introducing one of the most, and in his short time at the department, impressive. Let me, and this is gonna probably sound sort of slight, but you know, it's no secret I represent career staff at the Department of Education, and I guess it goes to this idea of divide. Jason Votel is a political appointee to the department under the current administration. And I have been at the department, and I've worked under, of course, a different administration and different politicals. Again, I don't have Margot's 30-something years of experience, but I think I could say that I have been really impressed and really sort of elated by the opportunity of what could be in the next session or a few years of work under Jason Botel. I actually shared this with him. I said, I don't know, it's maybe because you are a practitioner and we tend to have a certain kind of swagger and dialogue about who we are, or is it just, you know, old spirits? You know, I don't know. I always think that practitioners, educators, we have a certain way about who we are. Our belief systems are grounded a little bit in the reality that it's not about us. It's about kids. And I have sort of garnered that from my experience with him. Jason Botel is the Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education and Acting Assistant Secretary for Elementary and Secondary Education. Jason Botel first joined the U.S. Department of Education as the Senior White House Advisor for Education and has since taken on the title of Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education. Jason started his career as a teacher at Booker T. Washington Middle in West Baltimore. As a Teach for America Corps member, he went on to serve as founding principal and executive director for KIPP Baltimore. Most recently, he was the executive director of Maryland CAN. Jason Botel holds a bachelor and a master's degree in English from the University of Pennsylvania and a master's degree in education administration and supervision from National Louis University. Jason Botel, the person of 2 public school students, is the father of 2 public school students in Washington, D.C. And if nothing else, if you don't focus on the title that he currently holds, focus on the fact that he has been in those classrooms. Focus on the fact that when you are speaking the language of teacher preparation, when you are speaking the experience of new teachers walking into schools, when you are speaking the experience of teachers needing support, when you are speaking about principals who have a mission and a vision that sometimes is dictated to them and enforced upon them, and they don't know what to do, you are speaking to someone who understands that task. Someone who has what I would consider been in the trenches. We all are familiar with Baltimore, and maybe because I've had that sort of urban inner city experience, we know that it takes a certain type of person to be a soldier in that war. So I would like you guys to join me in welcoming Jason Botel.
So good to see all of you. Venetia, thank you for that very kind introduction. I'm going to try to live up to that. I want to start by just giving a huge thanks to Venetia and Margot and the team at the Office of Innovation and Improvement and everyone here from the Department of Education for putting this together. Let's give them a round of applause. And I also want to give a big thank you to all of you. I know many of you have traveled far to be here, and the work is so important, and the fact that you're taking this time, which hopefully you will find very useful, to step back, collaborate, build relationships with people. This is how the work's going to get done. So please give yourselves a round of applause for being here today. It's a real honor to be in this room with you. I got to hear some of the stories when I came in, and again, it's always moving how hard people are working and how deep people are going with children, with teachers, with principals, with schools, with programs. I just think there's nothing more critical for us to do as a country than raise our kids to be happy and healthy and productive contributors to society and people who can take care of themselves and their families. And you're playing such a critical role in all of that, so I really thank you for that. I feel a great deal of admiration and gratitude for what you do every day and for the teacher quality programs that we have the honor of supporting at the department. Just tell you a little bit about kind of my journey here. I was fortunate to be born to two very loving parents who really valued education, but themselves did not have the opportunity to get college degrees. My father went to public school in Philadelphia and dropped out of high school, joined the Air Force, and got his high school diploma while he was in the Air Force. My mother graduated from a public high school in southern New Jersey. Actually, it's the same high school I ended up graduating from years later. And she went through a one-year program to become an X-ray technician. And so throughout her career, she was an X-ray technician, and she retired just a few years ago, and now she's working as a teaching assistant in a kindergarten in a Jewish community center in South Jersey. So again, my parents really valued education, great parents, but themselves did not have higher education. I didn't grow up in poverty, but honestly, there was a lot of financial insecurity in my family growing up, and that meant moving a lot. It meant health problems that my parents had related to that. And so, plenty of people have had tougher upbringings than I have, but there were some real challenges. And the combination of my parents from as long as I can remember saying, you're going to get a college education, and frankly seeing how hard it was for my parents to try to give my sister and me a middle-class lifestyle, live in places that were safe, that had strong public schools, how difficult it was for them to do that without college degrees, really motivated me to go to and through college. And I was very committed to doing that. And so I found myself at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia and felt very grateful to be there. I'm still paying back the loans. But I was very grateful to be there. And I went there, and because of my own experience, both of the challenges I had growing up, but also the gift that public education gave me to go to this great university and really change the economic trajectory of my family. My sister and I are both college graduates now, and I see what that does for my own kids and what a difference that has made in our lives, and my niece. And so I got to Penn, and I thought, I want to help fight poverty. I want to help make sure that children don't have to go through the things that I went through, and much worse things that many children in our country, we all know, do go through. And so that was a driving force for me in college. I wanted to get my degree, and I wanted to help other people, kind of get out of poverty. And so, one of the ways that I saw an opportunity to do that was actually to volunteer in the schools around the campus. University of Pennsylvania is in West Philadelphia, and there are communities surrounding the campus that are struggling. Were certainly struggling back then. And there were public schools, and there were lots of programs at Penn through which I could go volunteer in the schools. And so I actually took a course. I did a lot of just going in and reading to kids in elementary schools, but I think the most impactful thing I did is I took a course called Teaching American Studies. It was a very innovative course. It wasn't an education course, it was actually an English course. I should say that I mentioned my mom was an X-ray tech. Well, not surprising, my mom wanted me to grow up and be a radiologist, a doctor. And she used to take me in the car. For a while, she was a mobile X-ray tech, so she'd have the equipment in her car, and she'd go to nursing homes and take X-rays of people on site. And so I remember being in the car with her at night. She would drive to the radiologist's house. And I always remember we'd walk up to the door, knock on the door. Radiologist you'd see sitting at dinner, get up, walk over, look at the X-ray. It's broken. Go back to dinner. And my mom would turn to me and say, "Do you know how much money he just made?" And she would say, "Look at the X-ray. I can tell it's broken. I don't need him to tell me it's broken. And he just made a ton of money. And I'm working, 12-hour days and getting paid, much less than that." So she wanted me to be a radiologist. After my one semester of calc, I thought that was not for me. So I became an English major. And I knew I either wanted to be a starving screenwriter and write socially conscious screenplays, or be a teacher, and I wasn't sure which. That's true. But then I took this course, Teaching American Studies, and so we were studying American literature and then teaching it at University City High School in West Philadelphia in the classroom with the actual teachers. And that was a huge wake-up call, because University City High School, which was about 10 miles from the high school I graduated from, I mean, it was just night and day in terms of the culture of the school, in terms of the resources in the school. And I was just really shocked. You know, the school was primarily African American. There were a lot of Southeast Asian refugee students. And, you know, what they were getting, and I'm not pointing fingers at anyone in particular, but what they were getting was not preparing them to go to Penn, which was 2 blocks away, not even, you know, to other colleges. And I was really shocked by that. And that really got me interested in education. And is there a contribution I can make to education to help empower students and communities? So one night I was walking around campus and I saw a flyer. This is 1996. I was a junior at Penn. And I saw a flyer for Teach for America. I had never heard of it. It was a much smaller program back then. And they were having an information session. And so I figured, oh, I'll go to that. That's interesting. I don't know anything about that. And, you know, I saw this mission, this vision of one day all children in this nation will have the opportunity to attain an excellent education. And that was just really gelling with me with all the things I was doing on campus, my own experience. So I went to this information session. And it was given by an alumnus of Teach for America, and he explained the program. And, you know, part of it was he said, you know, you commit to at least 2 years of teaching in an under-resourced school. And I thought, you know, this sounds great because I can do that for 2 years, and if I decide I like it, then that's my entree into the teaching profession. And if I don't like it, then after 2 years, I'll move to California and be a starving screenwriter. Like, it really seemed perfect. My first year of teaching was tough. I'm sure no one here had any challenges their first year of teaching. Mine was tough. You know, it took me a few months to figure out which way I wanted the kids to come in the room and leave the room. So it was very, very difficult. And in fact, even before that, you know, Teach for America starts with a summer institute. It's changed quite a bit now, but when I went, it was 1997. It was 5 weeks in the summer. And I found it incredibly difficult, even the 5-week training, even before I went into my own classroom. We were teaching summer school in Houston, and we were getting lots of classes in instruction. And, you know, I felt like I was failing every day. And I was just not used to that experience. My experience up to that point was I work really hard, and I achieve what I'm trying to achieve. That was my experience through, you know, K through 12 and college at Penn, and not saying it wasn't hard, but it was very linear to me. I read these books, I complete these assignments, I get these grades, I get this degree. And teaching, I was like all night planning lessons, asking for feedback, going to classes, and I'd go in and it just total failure. It just was like, I mean, I was really blown away by how hard it was. It was like one of those moments, and I'm sure we've all had them, where you know, I'm like, wow, the teachers I had all through my life, they actually worked really hard. Like, I didn't really see that, you know? It was like 6-hour days, and like, what's the big deal? And it's like, this is really, really hard. And so then I went, you know, I was placed in Baltimore at Booker T. Washington Middle School in West Baltimore. And, you know, Booker T actually has a great legacy. You know, prior to Brown versus Board, it was really the top kind of black middle school in the city. Thurgood Marshall is an alumnus of Booker T, Kwesi Mfume. But, you know, by the time I was teaching there, unfortunately, you know, again, similar to the experience I had at University City High School, what I saw there was a far cry from what the students needed to really be prepared for careers, for college, for post-secondary education. And so, you know, I taught there for a few years, and I enjoyed it. I will say that at the end of the first year, just after the first year, I decided, you know what, this is for me. As hard as it was, I felt like I was learning so much. My students were doing better and better. I felt like I was making some small but significant contribution to the fight against poverty, some contribution to empowering students and families and communities, and I really enjoyed it, and I got the hang of it. I'm not saying I was fantastic, but I got the hang of it. And so I decided by the end of my first year teaching, this is the career for me. I want to be in education the rest of my life, and I want to really contribute to fighting poverty through education, empowering parents and students and communities. And, you know, there are a lot of critics of Teach for America, and a lot of people say, you know, a 5-week summer institute really isn't adequate. You know, was I ready the first day that I walked in the classroom? Absolutely not. I do think that I learned a lot through that summer institute, and then over the next 2 years, I know many of you are running programs like this, I continue to get coursework and mentoring and that kind of thing. And again, it was a process. I think a lot of you, Teach for America has grown a lot. I think a lot of you are running programs, fantastic programs who are providing longer runways, more time, residency programs or pre-service programs where people are gradually becoming teachers as they help a teacher in the classroom and gradually become, lead their own classroom. And I'm a big supporter of all that. And I think, because of the hard work of the people in this room and our colleagues around the country, we're getting better and better at this. Now, I think we all know nationally, we still have huge challenges in terms of teacher shortage, in terms of teacher recruitment, in terms of teacher development, preparation, retention, and I know all of you are on the front lines of working on that. And again, I don't think there's anything more critical to the future of our country. So I just really salute you for continuing to work on that. But as you heard in what Venetia said, after teaching at Booker T for a few years, I was frustrated because I felt that our students needed so much, and there were real constraints on what we could do as teachers at the time. It was very kind of scripted what I could do, and I remember once I was teaching, and we had these textbook utilization guides, tugs, and I remember I was teaching one day, and the students just didn't get it. I was like, they didn't get it. So the next day, I retaught the lesson in a different way. And an administrator came in and said, you're on the wrong page in the book. The tug says you should be on this page. And I said, no, I get that, but the kids didn't get it yesterday, and that lesson builds on this one. I have to reteach this. And I got in trouble for that. And that was the kind of thing, it was kind of like, I felt like there were certain constraints that were not in the interests of students. And I heard people, speak to that here. And so that really inspired me. I decided I wanted to become a school leader. And I wanted to see if I could help lead a school where teachers really had the flexibility to tailor instruction to the needs of their students, where the principal in this case, where the school could really be customized for the particular school community. And so I actually took a year off, kind of a gap year as they call it these days, and I went and traveled, but I knew I was going to come back to education and I wanted to be a school leader. And I loved working directly with the students, but as I reflected on my own skill set, my own talents, and the colleagues that I was honored to work with, I felt like I could really, the best fit for me was to help other adults do the work in the classroom. So I went and I had a backpack and I had an application to one graduate school of education for the principal certification program. But in December of 2000, I was on a kibbutz in Jerusalem and received, I was checking my Hotmail account on a very old computer, and I received several emails from friends back in Baltimore, and they said, oh, this guy Mike Feinberg, who's the co-founder of KIPP, which I had heard of, but back then KIPP was 2 schools, Houston and the Bronx. Mike ran the one in Houston. That Mike had come to Baltimore and did an information session that they had started this new KIPP school leadership program to train people to start new KIPP schools around the country. And so I had several friends email me this all of a sudden and say, you should reach out to Mike. You would have loved this info session. You want to be a school leader, check it out. So I started emailing with Mike, and I got really intrigued. There was a lot about KIPP that I thought could really be helpful to children in Baltimore. And so I applied while I was abroad. It was a little bit crazy. I remember doing an interview at midnight Israel time. I was in Haifa on a different kibbutz, and then they were trying to set up a video conference interview in Istanbul. That didn't end up working out, but we tried. In the end, my final interview, they asked when I was getting back in the country. I remember it was like April 18th, and they're like, can you do it that day? And I was like, I've been out of the country for 8 months. I'll be on a 10-hour flight from Greece. Can we do it later? And they said, okay, how about the next day? So we did it the next day. And I was fortunate enough to be invited to participate in the program, and I completed the program. And again, that was clearly an alternative school leader preparation program, principal preparation program. There are now a lot more like that. I know some of you are engaged in leadership development as well. And again, starting a brand new school. Was I totally ready? Definitely not. But I felt like I got really good preparation, and that was a year-long program. And so I founded KIPP in Baltimore. And I had what I had hoped for. I had 4 teachers and myself going to students' homes, talking to students and their families about the school, working with them about to develop a shared vision of what success would look like for their children, and then actually tailoring instruction to meet the students' needs. Again, it was very difficult. I'm not here to say we got everything right. It was very difficult. But within a couple years, we were the highest performing public middle school in the city. We had some of the highest standardized assessment scores in the state and in the state of Maryland, and that was significant. Maryland is known to be a pretty high performing state. Don't want to take away from Virginia. I know we're in Virginia right now. Virginia also is high performing, but our student population was 100% African American at the time. It was close to 90% free and reduced meals, and our students were coming in way behind. We knew that from the testing we did as they came in, and they were progressing very, very well. So that was great. But now that I was on that side of the table, so to speak, I really was keenly aware of the challenges of teacher recruitment, of teacher retention, of finding great teachers, teachers who could come in ready to teach. And that was, of course, that was the struggle. I mean, what makes a great school? It's a great principal and great teachers. It's not, I always say, it's very difficult. It's not complicated. But you're all doing the complicated work of how do we get adults ready to step in and do that work. And I know that's really hard work, and we really appreciate that. And again, that was just, that was what was keeping me up at night all the time running the KIPP program. I ran the program for 11 years. And then I actually moved on to the board of the program as a volunteer board member, and I started running Maryland CAN, the Maryland Campaign for Achievement Now. And in that role, I was an advocate, and I was advocating for policies that I thought the research was clear would lead to higher teacher quality, better teacher recruitment, better teacher preparation and retention. And what I learned there was how difficult it was from a political perspective and a policy perspective to get policies on the books that really support the kind of work you all do. There's a lot of inertia in that area. There are, a lot of political interests in certain institutions and the way certain things are done. And again, I applaud all of you because you're on the front lines. Some of you are in institutions, innovating within institutions, which I gather is no picnic. And some of you are working outside institutions, trying to establish new structures. And we need all of that. I mean, all of it is needed. We can't take any of that off the table. And so I just really appreciate the work you all do. And again, I think we're honored at the Department of Education to support the work that you're doing. And what we're doing now, as we look to the coming fiscal year and that kind of thing, and we don't have, we don't know exactly what the budget from Congress will look like, but we're looking at how do we make sure that we're investing taxpayer dollars in programs that actually get a return on investment for students, for parents, for communities, for our country. And many of you are running those programs. And again, I applaud the OII team because they have facilitated incredible innovation and bringing you together and getting support to your programs. And when you're getting results, we want to invest and we want to help you get to touch more kids and touch more teachers. And we want to make sure that our precious resources, and we're never going to have all the resources we want, but that they're being utilized in a way that really gets results. One thing I'm going to just kind of ask for your help on is, I'm really working at the federal level to try to see what I can do to make sure we're supporting what works and replicating it and expanding it. We got to make sure that's happening at the state and local level too. And again, I know intimately how difficult that can be, and I know probably no one here has time to be lobbying your state legislatures all the time or your school districts, but we kind of have to get the work you're doing in the water, so to speak. It's got to become the norm and not the exception. And that's difficult. It's a slog. It's hard work. But we've got to do that. And I say that, and I'm not at all abdicating our responsibility at the federal level to invest in things that work. But ultimately, education, and ESSA only reinforces this. Education in our country is driven primarily at the state level. It's funded primarily at the state level. And we have to make sure that the normal funding streams that states and districts are providing to schools are, again, going into things that work. So I welcome all of you to engage with us through the OII team, or come visit us, come visit me. We'd love your ideas of how we can be helpful. I was speaking to a group last night, and they were talking about the kind of cover they need. What kinds of things we can do from a policy perspective that actually don't cost any money, but that can help drive conversations at the state level. Well, we want to play that kind of role. We want to be a partner. We want to be a critical friend. We want to, again, make sure we're providing resources where that makes sense for us to be providing. But we also want to make sure we're being a catalyst for the kind of change that's needed for all of you to do your best work, for your teachers to do their best work, so that we get the best outcomes for students. So again, I really thank you for what you're doing. I'm really honored to be in the field with you, and the last thing I'll say is in my current role, so I'm now running the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education, and this gets back to getting things in the water, a role that I think ESSA calls on us to play that frankly I don't think we've played that much, and I'm hearing that from the staff as I get to know them in the office, is really to make sure states know what's working in other states. That, I've been having calls with state chiefs from around the country, and I've had state chiefs, to their credit, say, you know, I always say, you know, how can we be helpful? And I had a state chief say, I got this one district I'm really struggling with. I don't know what to do with. She laid out some of the challenges and the demographics of that community. And, you know, every state has diversity in the state, and there's communities that are similarly situated to that community. And I think we can play a role of saying, well, here's something that's working in a very similar community over there. Let's make sure we're learning from that. We're packaging that in an actionable way for other states. And we're also getting states talking to each other in a way that's productive. Again, I think that's the only way we're going to be able to collectively tackle the challenges we have for kids, is working together in that way. So I'm thinking a lot with my colleagues in the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education, as well as throughout the department, about how we make sure we're playing that role. I mean, I've been saying we collect all this data. We are best positioned in the country, kind of by definition, to know what's working and what's not for which students, under what conditions, and how do we make sure that gets shared in an actionable way. So again, I really welcome your ideas, your thoughts. I hope this is a very helpful event for you. And I will close with that. And again, thank you for what you do. And I have a couple minutes to take questions. Venetia, do we want to do that? So if anyone has any questions for me, I know there's very little dialogue going on about the administration, so I can't imagine anyone has any questions or any thoughts. But if anyone has questions for me, I'm happy to take them. Thank you.
All right, questions for Jason.
Kristen Van Hook with NIET. When you were at Maryland, and what were some of the ways that educators got information to you that you could then use effectively at the state level when you were sharing those stories or advocating? Were there a couple of suggestions you have for what worked well?
Well, that's a great question. So generally, the first thing I did when I started working at Maryland CAN in the summer, fall of 2013, is we did what we called, excuse me, the Baltimore Opportunity Schools Report. So we looked at a bunch of data, and we looked at which schools were consistently, over a period of a couple years, leading children who qualified for free and reduced price meals to outperform overall state proficiency rates. And you know, there weren't that many, but there was a handful. And so we identified, excuse me, 8 schools that were doing that pretty consistently. So over 2 years, both reading and math in a majority of the grades they served. And we went to those schools, and I interviewed the principals and talked to other staff members at the school, and really tried to catalog, you know, what they identified as driving their success. And then there were another, I think, 15 or so schools that were not as consistently, but like in one subject or the other, they were doing it. And we interviewed them as well. And so we put a report together, and I ran around handing it out to school board members and state policymakers and that kind of thing. And you know, I would go to Annapolis and present what we were finding and advocate. I mean, we came up with a set of policy recommendations based on what we were seeing that was working. And some of those recommendations were kind of district level policy recommendations, and some of them were state level. But that's kind of the approach I try to take, is look at data, what can we learn from that, and then get in and actually talk to the people doing it to get some qualitative data on what's going on, and then how do we broadcast that. Thank you.
Jason, Bill Slotnick from CTAC, the Community Training and Assistance Center in Boston. The field of education is as divisive as any other field we have right now in the country. It sometimes feels that for every 10 people, we have 11 school reform organizations stabbing each other in the back. The 3 tools of public policy federally are regulation, legislation, and the role of the bully pulpit. Referring to the latter, what steps do you anticipate the department taking to help create a shared vision for what school improvement and education, public education, should look like in this country?
Yeah, thank you. So, you know, we're at a very interesting moment, not only because of the transition administration, but because of ESSA and because of our new state plans. And we've been getting the state plans in. Most of my days are filled with working on the issue of state plans coming in, checking them for completeness, talking with state education agencies about their plans. And then they're going to peer review, and you know, there's a whole process. So that's a lot of the work we're doing. Now, this is not going to be a quick process. And my answer to your question is not going to be something immediate. But what we have the opportunity to do is we're getting all these plans. We're seeing how different states are setting up accountability systems, teacher effectiveness systems, and communication systems. We are figuring out what kind of guidance states need that we can put out that's helpful for them. And then we will be monitoring, what's actually happening. How are the students doing? How equitable is the access to effective teachers, et cetera. And so my hope and what I'm kind of trying to prepare for is that we are well positioned to receive that information, not just as a compliance exercise, not just as a grant making exercise, although both of those things are very important, but also as an exercise to document what's working, where are things working, with which conditions, which demographics, and then packaging that in a way that's actionable. So I think we have a lot of opportunity to communicate out, and I hesitate to use bully pulpit just because I don't want to be a bully, but I think there's an opportunity to highlight what's working and make sure other states see the possibilities in doing that. ESSA gives states a lot of room to say we want to try this or we want to intervene in these ways, and there are parameters on that, so it's not wide open. And I'll say candidly, we've had state plans come in incomplete, and we have had to work with states to say you have to answer this question, you've got to be more specific, and that those conversations will continue. But also after a couple of years of a state trying something, if it's not working for a group of students, it's our role to say that's not working, that's going to have to come off the table, but all these other things are working in other states, and we want to provide the technical assistance. And that term gets used a lot at the department. I feel like a lot of times technical assistance ends up being how to fill out the grant application. Again, I know that's very important, the money's important, but I want to make sure we're giving technical assistance on substance, that we're giving technical assistance about what's working for students and how that can be replicated in other places. So I hope that answers your question. Those are some of my thoughts. Question here.
Good morning, and I just want to say to you, Jason, I have a connection. I am a former Baltimore City educator.
Okay.
I did 37 years in Baltimore City.
Where did you work?
Great. I actually started out as a mathematics educator at Patterson High School.
Okay.
In 1971, when Patterson High School was 92% white. The district has changed dramatically.
Sure.
One of the things that we're doing at Coppin State University as an innovative program is doing diversity with Frostburg State University, trying to make sure that educators have the appropriate tools on their belt before they go out into the classrooms. As you know, in Allegheny County and Garrett County, many of the educators do not leave that system, so many of those teachers will have to go where employment is actually. And then we know across the country it is going to be in urban areas. But have we really prepared our educators to work in urban areas? And I think one of the things that we so drastically need is former educators working with these teachers in preparation, clinicians, who have had the experience, because they can learn a lot from these people because they have the wisdom, they have the experiences, they know what is needed to try different things because they have a number of things on their tool belt. I say that as a high school math teacher for 23 years, department head, assistant principal, and retired as a principal, and now with 8 years in higher education, which is a completely different training as we work with young people. But I guess what I'm saying, we know that our schools across the country in the urban areas are in great need. We cannot hold on to many of the teachers because they don't realize it's hard work. We have an associate dean, Dr. Yi Wang, who wrote this innovation where we are working with teachers in a rural community at Frostburg State University, bringing them in to the urban areas so that they can see what it's like, because many times when they look at the news in that area, they see a different picture of working with urban children. As when I first went to Patterson High School, I couldn't pronounce the names of many of the students because At that particular time, there were all the cultures in the Baltimore area in that high school, but I stayed there for 23 years. I loved it. That is the only place I taught in Baltimore City, but it was a great experience for me, and I share those experiences with teachers now. But we've got to work on, because the demographics of the country are training. Teachers can come very competent, but do you have the commitment to meet these students where they are and a desire to take them to the next level? And that is one of the things we're doing with this innovative program. When the teachers come, the teachers from Frostburg come to Baltimore City, I think they're amazed when they walk in the classrooms and see how these teachers are working in the trenches every day and are able to try to move students forward. When our students go to Frostburg and have that experience, and it's completely different, it gives them another tool on their belt, because they don't know where they're going to end up teaching. But it's programs like this that need support. Programs like this that should be out on the front and helping prepare teachers for the students of today. You know, I tell teachers all the time, students do not select the families they are born into. Parents want children to be successful. Teachers want to feel successful, but they must be supported. They must be prepared in many cases, and a lot of times, much of this comes with experience. You have to have the experience and work with seasoned people, people that have the wisdom that can help you transition, because many times it's a roller coaster ride day in and day out. And it takes that preparation, those supports, to retain and keep teachers. So I'm just putting a shout out for Dr. Yi Wong and the program that we're trying to implement between Baltimore City and Allegheny County, Garrett County, with Frostburg State University, to try to help prepare these teachers so that they will have the tenacity and the commitment, the conviction to stay, because we need committed people working with children.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. I appreciate it. I have time for one more question, and then I got to run. I'm sorry. One more question. There's a question here.
You all will have a chance to hear about a lot of other programs, such as that at Coppin. Where am I going?
Hi, Jason, and thank you for coming today.
Sure.
My name is Kevin Walsh from William Patterson University. I'm still reacting to the earlier rhetorical question, how are our children doing? And my answer is not well. When we ask an 8-year-old, would you rather have a Burger King or a book? They choose Burger King. Would you rather have a pair of Nikes or a high school education? They choose a pair of Nikes. Burger King puts a lot of money into establishing values, at least perceived values, in the part of kids. Nike does the same thing. From where you sit at a federal level, do you see a role of advocacy in terms of changing the values in our country, where children and parents truly value education? Most of our national American values are based on things that we can't have. We value cars because we're not guaranteed them. And on the other hand, not only are we guaranteed an education, but we are required. And then we wonder why there's this dichotomy between values, cultural values. Can you comment on that and perhaps think about the role that the federal government could take? I'd love to see an advertisement that advocates literacy and less Nikes.
Well, it's a great question. I don't claim to have a silver bullet for that. But, I mean, right now, you know, kind of, I think biggest national anxiety is around the economy and around jobs. And again, I'm not pointing any fingers at anyone in particular when I say this, but clearly the education we've been providing for the past, you know, couple of decades has not been a good fit for a lot of students and the opportunities that exist in the economy. There's a mismatch in many cases between what we're providing in schools and the jobs that are available to students. And this cuts across many different lines of difference. I'm really struck by the Coppin-Frostburg partnership. If folks aren't familiar, you know, Coppin's in Baltimore City, in West Baltimore. Frostburg is Western Maryland, also a low-income part of the state, but a low-income, predominantly white part of the state. It's great that you're doing that program. I have alumni, former students of mine go to both schools, by the way. But this is an issue that affects communities throughout the country. And communities in poverty, white communities in poverty, black communities in poverty, Southeast Asian communities in poverty, Latino communities in poverty, we have not designed the education system yet that prepares those students for upward mobility. And I think rhetorically and beyond, we need to connect these things. That we're frustrated for good reason about the challenge we have with people getting, jobs that actually allow them to take care of their families, and that's something we need to address now. If we don't take the same amount of urgency to education and to what we're doing in schools, this problem is just going to be perpetual. And we're going to have a permanent underclass, and we're going to have permanently unemployed and underemployed Americans, and that's bad for the whole country. So I think that's something that we at the department need to be broadcasting, that the Department of Education it's not just about let's do something nice for kids. We're getting our children ready for the economy, and we need to do a much better job of that from early childhood all the way through post-secondary. So I appreciate the question, and again, I recognize all of you are on the front lines. I want to thank you for what you do every day, the commitment, the work, the respect, the honor, the love that you bring to what you do, to students, to teachers, to parents, to school leaders. We greatly appreciate it, and we look forward to an ongoing partnership with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason. So remember earlier I said we want to turn obstacles into opportunities. So why can't our students have burgers and books? Why can't they have Nikes and knowledge? Why can't they have a BMW and a PhD? Okay, so let's not forget that. We can create partnerships not only with the folks in this room, but you can have an activity where you go to Burger King and partner and give a child a book at the same time. Okay?